I've got all the stuff to
And
do.
we are live. We are live. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the Let's Talk Fishing video podcast. My name is Jay Angel. I'm going to be your host for this evening. You know, I got a bunch of cool stuff here. This stuff is from Crusset Gel, which my guest, Eddie Carper, is very familiar with them. We're going to talk about Crusset Gel a little bit tonight. And I want to show you folks what good old Tad Mays sent me. Oh, yeah. Bass crack. That's what he calls it. That's what it is. I got some shad crack and some, dang man, my eyes are so bad. Salty crack. That's the stuff I need. I'm going to be down in Fort Myers Beach next week. And bass crack. And I guess one more too.
Yeah.
And what is this? Crawl crack.
You got the shad crack, and and the crawl crack.
Thank you very much, Tad. Thank you. So that, guys, that is Crusset Gel. Look it up, Crusset Gel. One hit and they'll be hooked. Man, Eddie and I are going to be talking about that in a couple minutes. And then good old Delta Lures, the guys from, I guess that's Prairieville, not very far from my house, man. Look at all this. Man, Eddie, you're going to like this stuff. You being from Oklahoma, I'm sure you can appreciate this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. Look at that jig, man. That's my favorite color for jigging, too.
That's a good color.
Put some crawl crack on that. Look at all this stuff. Swim jigs and skirts. Swim jigs. And pumpkin head jigs. Or no, football head jigs. I don't know why I always call those pumpkin head jigs. Probably because I like to say pumpkin head.
You used to say pumpkin seed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My favorite color. Well, I have many favorite colors. Oh, my goodness. He sent me so much stuff. Oh, look at that, man. That's a saltwater thing right there.
Oh, yeah.
Love that saltwater, man. I just love that saltwater. There's more salt. Look at that. A bladed jig. You got to love those bladed jigs. Oh, I need these. Delta Lures, guys. Delta Lures. Delta Lures. Look at that. That's about as loud as it gets.
That's an awful good color in dirty water.
Yeah, look at that color, too. Down here in the Delta, Louisiana, man, you need these loud colors like that.
Mm-hmm.
You ever use that color?
I do.
Oh, spinner. Look at that. That's one of my favorite colors, spinner baits.
Yeah.
Big old willow leaf. All right, guys. Thank you very much, Delta Lures. Thank you very much, Crusset Gel. Now, man, Eddie Carper. Let's talk about Eddie Carper now. So, welcome, Eddie. It's good to have you on the show, man. Good to have you on the show. We already have a couple of comments. Roy Widgeon says, "What's up, Eddie?"
Who was it?
Roy Widgeon from USA Kayak Fishing Magazine.
Oh, okay.
And Roy's making fun of Roy's being funny. He says plumbers in here are showing their cracks. Yeah, bass crack. Bass crack. So Eddie, you are from Oklahoma.
Yes, sir.
And now you are temporarily residing in Ohio, man. That's
correct.
That's two completely different ways of looking at fishing. So as you travel, let's get a little bit. You've been fishing tournaments for a long time.
Long time.
So as you...
A little bit.
Just a little bit?
Now, I put my earbuds in. It was a little bit loud, so I turned it down a little bit.
All right.
So,
man, I can't wait to start asking these questions. Okay, so you started out fishing out in Oklahoma.
Out fishing with my dad when I was my mom and dad, they kind of split up when I was really young. So I got to go spend the summers with my dad 1 month in the summer, and started fishing a little bit. And, when I was young, 10, 12 years old, well, maybe younger than that, the only fishing we did was like on the Glover River back home. We go down there and we'd have a little spin cast reel and a rod, and we catch bass and brim and whatever else would bite. Back then we pretty much, if we caught it, we ate it.
Oh yeah,
we was poor, pretty
the
poor,
70s.
but
Well,
oh yeah,
I think everybody did that back in the 70s.
oh yeah. There wasn't no throw no fish back. If it was 2 inches long, it went in the pot.
I
Pretty
remember a
much.
cousin of mine, we were fishing in Wisconsin, and I snagged the carp and I started bringing in, and he said, well, you're the one who's going to have to clean that. What are you talking about? I don't clean carp. I'm just going to throw it back. But that was just the prevalent attitude back then. If you catch it, you got to eat it,
Yep, pretty much, and that was the attitude with bass too. Once Dad, long about when I was, I don't know, 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. He got a little blue Kingfisher boat and had a little 60-horse Johnson on it. So that's what we fished out of. We started going to the lakes around there in Oklahoma then, mostly Pine Creek Lake, Broken Bow Lake, which is a deep, clear one. Pine Creek is kind of a mid lowland type reservoir, and then Hugo Lake, which is just 15 or so miles west of there, is a lowland reservoir that's only average depth's only like 3 feet.
Wow.
So I learned right there around my house, within 30 miles any direction of my house in Oklahoma, I can do pretty much any kind of fishing I want. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty versed in everything, whether it be shallow or deep or clear or muddy. So I'm pretty well versed in the mechanics of fishing all three types of waters, even tidal waters. I've spent a lot of time on. So
Oh yeah, I spend a lot of time on tidal waters.
so I'm pretty versed everywhere. Won a tournament on St. John River a few years ago, which is
Oh,
tidal
there you
water.
go.
So
Let's talk about that. So, what was your favorite presentation for the tournament that you won on the St. John's?
what I was doing there was, I had I was throwing a vibrating worm, a little Zoom ultravibe speed worm.
Speedworm, okay.
Yep, on a 16th ounce bullet head weight
Ooh.
with a 4/0 hook in it, and I had that pegged, and wind was blowing real hard. But that's what I caught everything on, a medium heavy, 7'2" medium heavy rod. I can't remember which brand I was fishing with then. It may have been a Falcon or something. I don't remember the rod too much.
An Oklahoma guy using Falcon rods. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to use them. I don't use them anymore.
Okay.
They left me and I left them. so that's kind of how that went. I've tried to do business with them a couple of times, and it just has never worked out for me for whatever reason. I tried to support my local people, and they were local, but it just didn't work. So anyway, what really upset me about them is when they took their production out of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and sent it to China or wherever they sent it to.
A lot of companies are doing that now. But
yeah.
So this speed worm, were you just dragging it, or were you power fishing that?
I was actually dragging it on the bottom, really slow. The fish were only 2 to 3 foot deep. I could not see them because the water's dark down there. Where the part I was in Lake George, so the water was really dark and the wind was blowing hard, so it was kind of dirty anyway. So, I'd found an old dock is what it was, an old pier that stuck out there a little ways, and those fish were bedding next to the pilings on that old dock. Dock didn't have no top on it; it was old and rotten. And I just looked out and actually found it on Google Earth. And to be honest with you, I didn't even practice there. So I found it on Google Earth, and it was 42 miles one way to get to it. So that was one area that I wanted to check. So, when Minico Angler shut down there, I caught one immediately on a little finesse spinnerbait, War Eagle spinnerbait. Little
Okay.
finesse, little round turtle shell bladed spinnerbait, little bitty dude. So I caught a keeper, maybe 2 pounds, And so I said, well, there's some fish here. So I started fishing around, and this old dock was right there. So I started casting around that, and I caught one, you know, and then I jumped one off, and then I jumped another one off, and I had to do a few things to try to get a hook in the fish, and I knew what was going on after I lost like second or third fish.
Eh,
But like I think the third fish I put in the boat was 10 pounds,
wow.
and a few minutes later I caught an 8 pounder,
In the
and then
same spot?
in the same place, in the same
Wow.
place. They wasn't 10 feet apart. Couldn't have been.
Oh,
So I pulled down right there and was just fishing these dock pilings and catching fish. So I wound up with 26 pounds with 5 fish and won the tournament there against all local people. So I kind of got lucky, I guess, but I just kind of thought to myself, where would the full moon was coming on. Actually, it was a full moon that night, so I
oh,
knew the fish would be coming to the bank, and that's
yep.
just kind of how I attacked it. So I was looking for a sandy type area with some type of cover. There wasn't any grass because of the previous year's hurricane. There wasn't any grass. There wasn't any of the Johnson grass. I don't know what you call it. Uh, Buggy whips. There wasn't none of that. It was all washed out and gone. So I pretty much focused on this little dock on Google Earth, and I found a couple of them. And unfortunately, I only had to go to that one, but
So,
it worked out.
wow. So you had to adjust. The way I'm looking at this happen is you put on a bigger hook in order to get a better hook set.
So I started out with a 2/0 hook because a big hook sometimes in a worm will make a worm twist,
Yes.
and it'll twist your line up, and so it makes it a little harder to detect a strike if your line's coiled up, right? And this is before I
Yes.
met John Adams and got with him with his line taming serum, but long before that. So I didn't really have anything like that anyway. So I realized I had to go to a bigger hook, so I went to a 4/0. I believe back then I don't remember what brand of hook it was, whether it was Owner or Gamakatsu, one of them. Anyway, I went to a 4/0 hook, which is about as big a hook as I could throw in that worm, and it wasn't the EWG, it was just a regular offset shank hook because I didn't have any EWGs, and that did the trick. That and
And
the scent that I was using at the time might have helped some too.
okay, let me ask you a question about that. I have done that before, and I've stuck like a 4/0 hook in a smaller worm, and it just doesn't look right to me. Did it look right to you when you stuck that 4/0?
Not really. Now sometimes I'll still do that. For if I'm like fishing it weightless, if I'm swimming across the top of the water a lot, I'll do that because I need that longer shape because they'll short strike it. And
Yes.
and that's what I put the 4/0 hook in there for in this situation, because they was just grabbing the end of it and
Yes.
swimming it out of the bed and spitting it out or whatever was going on. So, when I changed the 4/0 hook, we started putting fish in the boat, and I don't think I lost the fish after that. So it's definitely a good adjustment.
Okay,
And
let me ask you this question. A lot of times when I'm getting short strikes, if I let the fish take it a little bit longer, just a couple seconds longer, I can stick them. Because up north, I had to use smaller hooks a lot of times.
up here, you're using a little bitty tiny thing,
Yeah, a little bitty tiny, like size 2,
1 or 2. Yeah,
little bitty things.
yep. So
Did,
I've
did
had
you
to
try to
adjust to
let the
that.
fish take them a little bit longer before
No,
you went to
no,
a?
no, because they would swim just a couple of feet and they blow it out.
Oh, spawners.
Yeah, they were spawning. I couldn't see them.
Okay,
I didn't know if they
spawners.
were. I wouldn't physically looking at them because the water was really dark. If you've ever been to the St. Johns River, the
I
water
have.
is really dark.
It's
So there's,
almost like very, very, very tannin stained. Yeah.
yeah, and without the grass being in there, it's not nearly as clear as what it usually would be there. So there was
Sure.
no way you could physically see them. No way. Now you might have could have seen them in Spring Creek where that water's really clear. It comes out of that spring. So that's where all the manatees go and hibernate in the wintertime in Spring Creek.
Yeah.
And that's where it was won this year, bed fishing there in Spring Creek. But I didn't I wanted to go look at it this year that I fished, but I found that right there real quick. So I just kind of sit down there and stayed, and it worked out. It worked out. I
You
think the
know,
next guy to me had 22 pounds. So,
well, congratulations, man. That's
well, thank you.
I have bed fished down here in Louisiana, and you can't ever tell that you're on the bed until that you're on beds until what you just described. They take it up, they swim over there, and they spit it out, and that whole process takes about half a second.
Take long. It don't take long.
And I'm like, what is going on here? Are these bluegills? And the guys, no, those are bedding bass. What? What? How do I catch them? How do I catch them?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to look for on bass, and I may not be 100% correct here when I'm talking about it, but early in the spring when it's still cool and the fish move up, you'll notice in March time frame or so, they'll start getting red lips. So what the red lips are is they're eating crawfish. You know what I believe. I don't know that to be a fact, but I believe that's the deal. So they get the red lips on them, right? And primarily talking about male bass, but females do it too. And then a little bit later on, those bass will get a red hue in their eyes. When they get that red hue in their eyes, they're getting ready to get on the beds. You know, and that may be, you know, I hear people say bass, you know, black bass, largemouth bass start spawning at around 60 degrees. I've seen them on beds at like 56, 58 degrees. And but by my experience, the bulk of them don't hit the bed until the water hits about 65 to 68 degrees in a
65.
constant temperature. In
I've always
Florida,
heard,
it's more like 70 to 75 degrees.
yeah,
So
it's because the water never really gets below 65.
you catch that male bass and you're fishing and you pick him up out of the water and he's spraying,
Oh, yeah.
they're getting ready to do it.
And their
So,
tails are torn up.
yep. The tail is kind of the last sign. He's already made the bed, or
Yep.
she's already been on the bed, and you'll go to seeing them with them bruises all over their sides from beating themselves against rocks and stumps and stuff to break up the egg sacs and whatever. So there's some visible cues on the fish if you know what you're looking for to tell you what stage that they're in. It's taken me a long time to learn this. Nobody taught me that, but
No,
it's taken me a long time to learn that on my own.
most of the guys who know it don't talk about it. So
That's right. And back when I was coming up, that kind of thing around home with people I run around with wasn't really a thing. We didn't care about it. It wasn't something that we went out to specifically do. And now that I fish national tours and whatever, it's something that I've had to learn and teach myself how to do it. Because I'll be honest with you, when you fish a national tour, you better know how to do everything pretty good.
you do.
You can't slouch at nothing. You gotta know it.
Yeah, because if you want to make Angler of the Year, you can't have a bad part of a tournament.
That's right.
You got to be
So-
on your game in every tournament, every minute of every tournament.
You can't let them have an inch because they're going to take a mile if you do.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
those
we were
guys ain't.
we were talking a little bit before the show about what you were talking about, one of my favorite presentations, and that is jerk baits in the early spring in shallow water. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Jerkbait fishermen in the world by any stretch of the imagination. But how that goes with me, my experience is, I'll start out in like February on 45-degree banks. Just 45-degree banks with big rocks on them. That's what they're pretty much laying on. The fish will be, sometimes those fish will be in 2 foot of water, and sometimes they'll be in 20 foot of water. But the cadence of working that thing, that's when it's super duper important, when that water's still down there in the 48, 50-degree range. It's real important on the cadence. The longer the pause, the fish is slow, he's swimming up to look at it. And the longer you let it sit there, the closer he gets, and then you'll kind of twitch it, and that'll entice him to bite it. And what you see a lot of guys doing on TV, just jerking the snot out of them, that's not what you want to do. It's just barely move your rod tip 6 inches. That's all you got to do, 4 to 6 inches. Beep, 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 and then stop it. And beep, beep, stop it. And you'll let it sit there for, sometimes up to half a minute, 30 seconds before you move it again. And that's what works for me there.
That is so hard to do.
Dude, it's takes a lot of patience, a lot of skill, and a lot of patience to do it right. And you got to experiment with it a lot throughout the day because it changes.
One of my favorite writers of all time his name is Matt Straw. He writes for the In Fisherman. He would tell me, I got to sit there and drink beer with him one night up in Fish Creek, Wisconsin, which is right on Green Bay, which is one of my favorite places in the world. And he said, man, I'll reel it down the depth, do this, then light a cigarette, smoke the cigarette, and just sit there and watch my line. Of course, I don't smoke, but
Me either.
I know what he was saying. That's just, hey, Tad Mays just showed up. Okay, now that Tad's here, Crush It Gel. Do you use that all year long?
I've actually been with Crush It Gel since I think the first batch I got of it was last fall, and I was transitioning at the time from Oklahoma to Ohio to take this job in Ohio. So I didn't really get a chance to use it. I tried it on a couple things there, a couple times that I got to go, but I didn't really realize the value of it until I got to Ohio and I started fishing up here in about April time frame, and I started using it and realized how good of a product it was. And what really, really sold me on the product is one of my earliest trips up to Detroit River.
Ooh.
I went down south there to the mouth of Lake Erie, where it dumps into Lake Erie, and I could see these smallmouth sitting on a rock ledge there where the channel comes out. They were sitting right on the edge of that current. There was like 8 or 10 of them right there, and I could see them on forward-facing sonar. And I kept fishing for them. I went through a couple different baits. Nothing would get them. I knew they were bass. I can tell the difference between a bass and a drum and pretty much everything else in the water. Once you do that for a while, you kind of you see the difference. So I got down in my boat and I got this right here, and it's dirty. You can't read it. Put it on there. It's a crawl crack.
Okay.
And I put that on a Star Lures little flatworm I get from Star Lures.
Ooh,
another
nice.
One of my sponsors, right? Not the Berkeley one, the one from one of my sponsors. I had to make some just 4 up there in a 3.5 inch, which is my favorite size, and several different colors to kind of dial things in. So I put this on there. When I first pitched the drop shot to those fish, immediately there's one swam up to it and he grabbed it. And you've smallmouth fished a lot on drop shot.
Right.
You very rarely ever feel one of them bite. Not a smallmouth. If you feel it bite, it's probably a drum. But I caught that smallmouth, and then I proceeded to catch the rest of them. So I thought, well, man, that's something to that. And I've done that 2 or 3 times. And like last week when I was up there fishing the super tournament out of Detroit River, I had a co-angler in the boat with me, and I'm catching fish right and left. The guy in the back of the boat ain't catching nothing. We're fishing the same water. Well, the poor co-angler, he ended up zeroing. He never caught a bass, and I had 16 pounds something, all bass. I caught drum all day. I caught catfish. I caught walleye. I caught rock bass. I caught about every kind of fish that swims in Lake Erie under 30 feet deep. You know what I mean? Anyway, besides of a trout or a salmon. And he's back there just, I wish I could catch something. You know, I threw him a tube of this, and he wouldn't put it on. And I'm like, oh, man, this is a difference. This is why I'm catching them and you're not. I'm telling you right now, I'm not jerking your chain. So I sent that guy a message a couple of days later, sent him Tad's phone number, and I don't know if he reached out to Tad or not. But I've had two or three co-anglers in a boat with me since I started fishing up there. And one guy, I got him to use it, and he started catching fish immediately, and he ordered him some, you know. So I'm a true believer in it. Now, I believe all the scents will work, and I haven't even gotten to try some of these yet, you know, because I've been up on Lake Erie, and up there the bait fish are a little bit different than they are in the south. And the fish that I'm catching up there are primarily feeding on crawfish. You know, I've seen too many of them in my live well
they're
feeding on something else.
Pinchers,
big suckers too. You know, you wouldn't believe the size of some of them crawfish in Lake Erie. You know, I didn't believe it. And I got a pincher out there in my truck that's probably 2.5 inches long, just the pincher. So big. So I'm a true believer in the Crush It gel, and you know, I'll have it from now on forever. And anytime I'm going fishing, you can better believe it's going to be on my jig or my spinnerbait or whatever it is that I'm throwing, because I believe that it truly will make a fish bite that don't want to bite.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions about Crush It gel then. So you get the tube out and you put that on a speed worm. How well does it stick?
Good long time. As the water gets hot, the hotter the water gets, of course, the more the oils and stuff come away from it, and then it dissipates faster. So like you're fishing on Erie, I can go minutes between applications and a lot of different presentations. It just doesn't, the water's cold in the 70s, so it sticks to the bait really, really well up there. You know, down in the warmer climates, it's not quite as, it don't hang on there quite as long, but it to me, it's going to be there. I believe that there will be, whether you can see it on the bait or not, there's still some residual oil and film on the bait from it, and I believe the fish can pick that up, and you know, it'll definitely get you an extra bite or two during the day, or maybe even more.
Well, we have a comment from the audience. It's Rob Welsh, our old buddy Rob, Cajun Rob Welsh. He says that Crush It gel also sticks well on crankbaits.
It goes. You can put it on anything. I put it on crankbaits. I put it on whatever I'm throwing, and it works well. But my primary use for it for the applications up there on Erie. Now that's going to change here pretty quick because they're starting to move back up shallow. So spinner baits and top waters and faster moving stuff, chatterbaits, they're going to come into play if they're not already. Especially with this little cool down we're having right now, that'll push them up there a lot faster. But it doesn't matter what bait you put it on; it'll stick. It don't matter if it's a plastic worm or drop shot minnow or one of these little shaky minnows they've been using on the forward facing sonar or crankbait or top water. It stays on there. And I don't know how many times I've seen this a lot of times in my lifetime where you're working a top water, a spook or a popper or something, and you'll see a fish slide right up underneath it. Just get their nose right to it. That's what they're doing, is they're smelling it, you know. And people don't think that they do, but they're just like us. They have nostrils, just like a deer. And underneath the water, they're a predator, so they rely on their sense, all five of their senses, to pick up whether that's food or it's danger or whatever the case is. So when that fish slides up there to your bait, and this is particularly important with the swim bait. It's probably a glide bait even. So they're gonna follow. You'll see a lot of followers with the swim bait. They'll be right behind it, just moving with it, following it, like they're in a trance or something like that. Well, what they're doing is they're getting a bead on that bait, and they're smelling to see what it is, And if you have something on it like this salty crack or the bass crack or even the crawl crack, they're going to smell that, and it's going to trigger a response from them to feed because it has the amino acids in it that the fish are after. So it's going to turn that fish from a follower into a biter.
Wow. We have a couple of comments I'd like to get through. First of all, Rob Welsh said, "The man, the myth, the legend, Eddie Carper." And Todd Lloyd's from Texas. He also says that Eddie Carper's a great guy and very knowledgeable.
I try.
You try.
I appreciate the vote of confidence there, guys.
Well, I'm learning things. That's awesome. That's what this is about. Just disseminating some really good, high quality fishing information. So, as you transition around the country, how do you adjust it to? Oh, okay. Let's say you go to a body of water you've never fished before. How are you going to get ready?
So, what I do if I've never been there before, what I do, probably the first thing I do is I'll jump on Google Earth, and like on my phone, or I like to use it on my computer because then I can use Google Earth Pro and I can go back and look at history, like I did at St. John's. That little dock I told you I went off of there, it's not visible at normal water level. So the water was about a foot low, and a couple of little pylons was sticking up, and I could see that on whatever year I was looking at. I don't remember what year I was looking at the time. I think 2016 or 17 or something like that. I got fired up to go down there because I seen Rick Clun win that tournament down there, and it just blew my mind. I went down there to fish like that, and that ain't what I actually wound up doing because there wasn't no grass. But first thing I'll do is I'll go to Google Earth, and then I'll look at it. So I'm going to the Mississippi River next weekend. I got into the regional over there. They sent me an invite to come to the regional.
Whereabouts on the Mississippi?
It's pools 13 through 17 is what we can fish. So it's in Rock Island.
Rock Island. Okay, so that's from Illinois, Iowa. Because I would think I have fished. Yeah. I fished La Crosse, Wisconsin, dozens of times. I love that place.
Was it La Crosse? I wouldn't be near as nervous about it because like I'm looking on Google Earth at it today, which is what I'm talking about here, and I can't see what I really want to see. It's just that the diversity of cover is just not there in those pools like it is up in La Crosse. So it's going to be pretty much wing dams and creek mouths and stuff like that. So that's the first thing I'll do.
Backwaters
is all we'll go if you can get in any of them. But that's what I'll do is I'll go to Google Earth and I'll look at that, and then I'll go online and look at looking at past history, like with the BFL, is a really good thing to look at. So you can go back and look at the past winning weights, and maybe they said something about an area or something in their interview or whatever that might be. But I take all that information and I pretty much roll it all up together, and then from that point, I pretty much create a game plan. I'll also look at CMAP or Navionics or both, probably both, because they're a little bit different. So I look at my mapping cards, and then I'll pick me out some places before I ever go there. I'll like fire up my graph here at the house, and I'll zoom in on those places, and I'll make me some waypoints. These are places I want to try. That way they're already on my graph when I get there, and all I got to do is go to them. Well, this ain't work. So I'm looking for a rocky bank. I'm looking for a creek mouth with a little drop there, or a wing dam or something. Usually I'm trying to look for something different, something that just isn't going to catch everybody else's eye, kind of like I did at St. John. And then I'll once I get there, then I'll kind of fine tune what I have found on Google Earth and through the different online research that I've done for other tournament organizations and that's how I go about it.
Man, that's really some good information you just imparted right there. Wow.
I learned that from Edwin Evers, by the way.
Wow.
Many years ago, and back then, heck, I didn't have a computer or nothing like that. I just kind of winged them, and just relied on what I physically knew. But once I started getting up into the upper levels of stuff and fishing, I realized that I had to do a lot more planning and research to be successful because you're not going to show up somewhere and just land on them. That's rarely ever going to happen. So it takes a combination of research and skill and mental up here in your head, and you put all that stuff together and you come up with a good game plan and you work your game plan. If that doesn't work, then you kind of punt and you do something different. But you have to have a plan when you're going somewhere, and particularly if you're going somewhere you've never been, like I'll be next week. So I won't get to practice for that thing. So that all the research that I do, I'm going to lean on that really hard until I actually get on the water, put a few hours in on the water, and see what's working.
Wow, that was really some good information you just imparted to us. Thank you very much for that.
Thing back, I won't lie to you.
Yeah. So you mentioned wing dams. Have you ever fished wing dams before?
Yeah, I fished the Arkansas River a lot back where it runs through Oklahoma and down. I fished the Arkansas River all the way from Muskogee, Oklahoma, all the way to the Mississippi River. And I fished the Mississippi River from the mouth of the Arkansas River all the way down past Greenville, Mississippi on the main river.
Okay, I've caught thousands of walleyes on wing dams, but I've never caught any bass. How do you specifically target bass on a wing dam?
Time of the year is where they're gonna sit on. It's usually on the eddy right behind it. Right in, like, if a wing dam comes out and makes a point, they'll be right on the down current side of it most of the time, right there. But it won't be very far back from the end of it. They'll be right there where that water swirls. And sometimes you can see that, sometimes you won't see that, and they might actually be in the seam that's created by it. Other times when fish are super active, they might surprise you and they might be on the current side of it on that same point. They might be right dead in the current, facing the current, particularly if there's a rock there or something that they can kind of hide behind. All bass kind of do that. Bass are more current oriented than a lot of people realize, but they don't like to be in the whole current all the time.
That's the same place a walleye is going to be. That eddy, we always call that the snag hole.
Yep.
You're going to lose a lot of jigs.
Yep, you will. That's where the square bill crankbait comes in at for me. I'll throw the crankbaits and the jerkbait 2-to-1 over a jig in that particular case, especially if I'm having to bump the bottom with the bait, if I can't throw a top water, a buzz bait, a spook, or a pop or something like that. I'll work it top to bottom. If I have to throw a bottom bouncing bait like a jig, I try to go as super light as I can because they don't get hung up. It's bad. So my favorite weight on a jig is a 5/16.
Okay.
It's a little bit less than a 3/8, but a little bit more than a quarter.
Boy, some of those wing dams, when that pool you're talking about, they can be a little deeper than what you're used to. 15, 16 feet, you gotta try to get down there and bang, 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 then bring it up before you get snagged.
Fighting two different things there, the current and and the current will drag your jig into those crevices. So that's why I try to stay away from throwing a jig on the wing dams,
Yeah.
particularly the jig. Now, when I fished the Red River one year, I caught them really, really good on the jig on the wing dam. But again, it was a really light jig. I think it was a 1/4 ounce jig, and those fish were only in about 2 to 3 feet of water, even though the bottom of the wing dam was 17, 18 foot deep. Never
Okay.
caught any fish deep. They were shallow, but it would not hit anything that was moving too fast or top water. That was a fall tournament too. So wing dams are really good places to catch them at. If you find the right one, you
Yeah.
can really load the boat.
You can catch anything on a wing dam, man. We caught catfish, tons and tons and tons of walleyes.
Jane lives there, so
Yeah.
everything's there. The shad will
Oh,
be there, and particularly in the fall. The fall is one of the better times to fish them.
sometimes in the Mississippi River we couldn't even find the bottom because there were so many shad just swirling around in those eddies. And the fish are there. They might be hard to catch because their stomachs hurt because they're so full.
Yeah, that's when you got to throw something different. You got a million shad out there swirling around, and that's when you pick up chartreuse and black.
There
You
you
throw a
go.
chartreuse and black shrimp. It's something a little different. You want it to be about the size of the bait fish, the shad, but you want it to be a slightly different color.
Something like
Or
that, chartreuse and
maybe.
black.
Mm-hmm.
God,
Now,
me.
a bladed jig is great on a wing dam too. By the way, I didn't mention that, but it is.
And put a oh, what the heck's the name of that thing from Yamamoto, Gary Yamamoto lures? A Zako. Put a Zako in the back of that thing. Tad Mays just said it's always a mental game. And also he said that there's lots of wing dams on the Red River.
Yes,
Um,
there is.
okay, it's 42 minutes after the hour. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to do?
Well, first, of course, we've been talking about Crush It Gel. Let me get my camera here all evening. So I give a shout out to them. They're a good sponsor of mine. They do me right. I talk to Tad all the time. I'll walk through fire to help him out if he needs help. That's kind of the relationship we got. I think he would do the same to me. It's pretty much the same way with John Adams of Crusher Lures. I mean, not John Adams of Crusher
Adams.
Lures. We'll get to that in a minute. John Adams of Star Lures. The man is a almost legend status on his soft plastics. He can make any color you want. He's been buying a lot of different molds and having things made so we can work on these smallmouth up here, and he's helped me a great lot. And I try to help him as much as I can. He also has line taming serum, which I'm a big fan of. I put it on all my reels, spinning reels, casting reels. It does a great job on your line, smooths it out, slicks it up. You can cast a long ways. Like I said, it takes the coils out of your line, and particularly with fluorocarbon, it works awesome with fluorocarbon.
Yeah, I was just
And
about to
then,
ask. How,
yeah,
how about the smaller braids where you get all those wind knots?
it does well with brace too. It keeps those down as well. Um, I don't use it so much on the braid as I do fluorocarbon and monofilament. But one of the bigger differences you'll notice once you go put that on your line, and I like to do it before I go out on the water. Like before I get on the water, or even the evening before, I'll put it on there and let it soak overnight. It really, really does good then. But it doesn't take it but a few minutes to start working. So you can do it throughout the day. Um, it'll last for me. It depends how many fish I'm catching, of course, but it'll last a couple hours, and then maybe you'll have to put a little more on sometime during the day there to keep your line. I like my line to lay slick on the water, straight as a string. And years ago, how I did this, I go out there and stretch my line till it was almost at the breaking point, but that didn't last very long. But it worked good, but it didn't last very long. So this works about as good as that, but it lasts a lot longer. So you get 2 to 4 hours out of it anyway, or I do at least. And then we'll bounce over here to Crusher Lures. They got with me early in the year last year, I think it was, and I started using their grass crusher jig a lot. Their heavy finesse jig a lot. They got a buzz bait that squeals to high heavens right out of the package. You ain't got to do nothing to it. I love the thing. I'll be throwing it next weekend. I'll guarantee you that. The swim jig too. I can promise you. Up here on the Great Lakes, I hadn't been using this stuff all that much up there because it's completely different fishing.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I could, but I'm trying to learn how to catch these bigger smallmouth on these lakes. So I put everything else out of my mind, and I'm pretty much concentrated on catching those 5 pound plus smallmouth for the last few months up there. But Crusher Lures, you go check them out. The website's right there on the bottom of underneath me here. They got a myriad of different shaky head hooks and just you name it, spinner baits. That little petite spinner bait, the guy's got a little living rubber like skirt on it that just flares in the water real good when it pulsates, really good in the water. So you definitely want to check them out. Their vivid spinner baits are great. I don't know of a bait they make that isn't great. I have a bunch of them, and I'm about to put in another order and go ahead and get stocked up for next year before we run dry here. But I can't recommend them enough. No. Now, the most recent company that started working with me, Hayabusa Hooks, they're freaking phenomenal. Let me tell you, I haven't really gotten to use a lot of their bigger hooks yet because I've been chasing these smallmouth, but those little drop shot hooks that they make up there, you can't get them out of a fish's mouth. You have to use pliers every fish you catch. I mean, it's 1 out of 10 you might be able to get the hook out of them without getting your pliers. We're talking about a little drop shot hook. So they're just phenomenal. Hold the fish really good. Now I can't say that for the tube that I was using last week. It was another brand, a tube with I don't know what brand hook was in that thing, but I'll promise you I'll never throw it again. I just lost too many fish. But every hook that I've used thus far since I've been with Hayabusa has done a phenomenal job for me.
Man, that's awesome. That is just awesome.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to make a shout out to 2 companies. First of all, we talked about Crush It Gel. Thank you so much, Ted, for introducing me to all these great people. Thank you for your donation to me. I mean, I'm going to try this stuff out. I'm going to be fishing a lot this fall. Can't wait to use that stuff in my fall fishing. And also Delta Lures, just like I said to you guys, man, Delta Lures. DeltaLures.com, man. Just look at that. He was talking about black and green with a gold blade right there. And thank you, Delta Lures, for sending me that stuff. I love it. And man, Eddie, thank you for taking time out of your schedule for coming and talking to the listeners on this podcast.
My pleasure. I like to talk anyway, so
yeah.
I'm pretty good at it.
Well, that's why I call my podcast "Let's Talk Fishing."
Yeah.
Fishermen, man, I'm telling you what, a dedicated fisherman like you and me, it's not hard to get a guy talking about fishing if he really loves fishing.
No, I haven't been anywhere in the world, and we were talking about this earlier, but I haven't been anywhere in the world, that people didn't fish. When you mention fishing, you already got something in common. Every gas station I stop at when I'm pulling my boat or whatever, people come up talking about fishing. So immediately I feel like I've got something in common with just a total stranger that just walks up to me on the street. So, that's what fishing does for us.
It sure does. And, guys, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in to Let's Talk Fishing podcast. Man, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for Fort Myers. I'm going to be fishing down there with Pam. Pam is just a tough lady. 67 years old, and she'll take her kayak 15 miles offshore to fish for sailfish. Wow. She says that her range with her kayak is 15 miles. She's telling me this, and I said, well, guess what? My range with a kayak is less than 1 mile. I just can't do it. And she's like, well, I'm going to bring a tow rope in case you run out of steam. I'm like, I'm not proud.
Yeah. I don't think I could go 15 miles offshore in the kayak.
I don't think I'd go 15 miles offshore in the Gulf in your boat.
I might not would either. I've been in some water like that though in my boat, and I have never been. That's one thing I can say about a Phoenix boat. It's second one I've had, and since I've had it, I've not either one of them. I've never stuck a wave. I've come close a couple of times, but I've never stuck a wave. I've never had a problem whatsoever. They always perform. They ride well. They take the big water extremely well. So I'm proud to run them.
Well, that's the problem with the Great Lakes is it's like you're in a washing machine, man. It just waves come at you from 3 different directions. You're going this way, and you're going that way, and you're going that way, and then you're going that way, and then back. I've speared a few waves, but also I always got walleye boats because, I like to fish Green Bay, and you just don't want to go across Green Bay, and you want the extra protection of a walleye boat.
Yeah. You can definitely get in trouble real fast on them lakes up there if you don't know what you're doing. Real fast.
And there's only one way to learn what you're doing. You can't learn it from a book. You can't learn it from a course. You just got to get out there.
You got to go do it.
And I had been in the man, I had been sitting in the co-angler seats. I'd been sitting in as a writer, I'd fished with a lot of these guys, and I thought I knew, and then I got out there in my own boat, and like, what do I do? But I'm still here.
Yep. You just gotta get used to it. Once you run it a few times, you get a little comfortable with it, and then you're not scared. Just a lot of times I tell people I'd rather run Erie in an 18 to 20 mile an hour wind than I had running in a 10 mile an hour wind.
The waves are a little different.
The waves are different. They're a little further spread apart. You can run the troughs. You can run the peaks. It doesn't beat you up as bad. On a 10 mile an hour wind, they're 3 foot tall, and they're extremely random, and they're choppy.
And it's hard to turn.
and it will just beat the snot right out of
you, man. It's hard to turn in waves like that.
It is. You'll get wetter in a 10 mile an hour wind than you will in a 20 mile an hour wind on Lake Erie. I can promise you. I've been up there and did it too much now.
And let me tell you, that water in the middle of August, it's still cold.
Yeah. The hottest I've seen it all summer was 78 degrees. And that's up close.
78 degrees.
Near the shore.
Yeah, that's near the shore. That's warm.
Yeah. That's the hottest I've seen it. And but the average is more like down around 70.
Yep.
From what I've seen. So it could have been just the area I was in. Maybe there was a hot spring there. I don't know. Because I haven't fished up there. I don't know a lot about Erie. All I know about Erie is look for the big rocks.
Yep, look for the big rocks.
Yeah, it's taken me 3 months of fishing up there to find some areas with the right kind of rocks in it.
Yep. Well, hey, man, thank you very much for coming on again. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And, guys, it's Wednesday night. Make your plans. Go fishing this weekend. Remember, you only get to do this once. And with that, I'm going to end the podcast. Eddie, please stick around. I'd like to talk to you for 2 minutes afterwards.
Okay.